We all remember this moment.
The winner, it's a tie.
Hey, it's Michael, aka Oscar Man. But for this video, I'm going to discuss some shocking Oscar show moments that don't pertain to acting wins. I already covered that in another video. The link is in the description below. The moments covered here are ones you are all familiar with, but there is one you may not have heard about. Stay tuned for that a little later. Let's get this one out of the way.
Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
The moment this happened, my phone started blowing up. Friends were asking, was that a staged bit? I was positive it was real, based on Will Smith's expletive that was bleeped out. The slap heard around the world for the show honoring films of 2021 was, for me, one of the all-time low points in Oscar history. Was show host Chris Rock's ad-libbed comment about Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, funny? No. Was it in bad taste? I don't know. If you're going to be part of the entertainment industry, especially as an actor, you either develop a thick skin or you won't survive. The various slings and arrows thrown your way can sting, but you learn not to take those insults personally. Trust me, I know. I've gotten my fair share on this channel. Was this a chicken or egg scenario? Did Chris Rock ask for it by making a joke he likely knew would not go over well? Did Will Smith overreact, or was he simply defending his wife? I think what was possibly even worse than the assault was the Academy's decision to allow Will Smith to accept his Best Actor Oscar later on in the show, giving him carte blanche to give an award-winning performance while clutching his statue, tearfully justifying his behavior and offering a self-serving apology to the Academy, but not to Chris Rock. The industry responded by giving Smith a standing ovation, though after the show made an abrupt about-face and condemned his behavior. The following day, Will Smith resigned from the Academy, whose Board of Governors, after an internal investigation, banned Smith from all Academy events, including the Oscar show, for 10 years. Do you think the punishment was sufficient? Too much? Not enough. I think Smith should have given back his Oscar and not have accepted the honor. The Oscars have faced declining viewership over the past decade, but this kind of negative attention is not what was needed to bolster viewership. This was not the first time the producers of the Oscar telecast had to act quickly, which you'll see in the clips to follow. Now, unless you were on vacation visiting Mars, you saw the all-time screw-up which took place at the announcement of Best Picture for 2016.
And the Academy Award for Best Picture
You're impossible. Come on. La La Land.
While the Will Smith incident was shocking in a disgusting way, handing the wrong envelope to presenters Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway was simply embarrassing. I mean, this had happened at an event which has existed for 88 years. The Oscars are thoroughly rehearsed before the actual broadcast. Surprises are not expected, except they happen, hence this video. I'm an actor. I know things can go wrong during production. But when a person's sole job is to hand an envelope to a presenter with a clearly marked label stating the category, that should be a no-brainer, right? Who is responsible? Well, PricewaterhouseCoopers, the accounting firm that has tabulated the Oscar ballots since 1935, brings two sets of envelopes containing the winners to the ceremony, one set to hand out and the other as backup, just in case. Brian Cullinan, an accountant for PwC, had been bringing the suitcase of envelopes containing the winners to the Oscars since 2014. On that fateful evening, Cullinan was tweeting a photo of winner Emma Stone and not paying attention to the task at hand. Two envelopes were photographed together, and Cullinan handed Warren Beatty the envelope with the Best Actress winner instead. So that explained why Beatty hesitated when he saw Emma Stone's name, and Dunaway, seeing La La Land on the card, read that as the winner. It wasn't until the film's producers were all on stage that PwC realized the mistake and came out to correct it. Jordan Horowitz, one of the producers of La La Land, learned of the mistake and showed the audience the card with the correct winner, Moonlight. The audience in the Kodak Theater was in shock. I was in shock. Everyone was in shock. Not only at the mistake, but because most expected La La Land to win. And of course, I lost all the Oscar pools that year. So what became of Brian Cullinan and Martha Ruiz, the two PwC representatives responsible for the envelopes? Well, the day after the awards, both were fired from the Oscars by the president of the Academy. However, Cullinan and Ruiz still work for PricewaterhouseCoopers. Fashion has always played an important part of the Oscar ceremonies. While the men have not strayed too far from the traditional black tuxedo, the women have had more opportunities to, let's say, go outside the box. The ones most often mentioned are Bjork's swan dress, costume designer Lizzie Gardner's American Express gold card number, and South Park creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker's red carpet recreation of Jennifer Lopez and Gwyneth Paltrow's Oscar ensembles. But leave it to an Oscar-winning icon to leave everyone else in the dust. In 1985, Cher gave one of her best performances, I think it was her very best one, in Mask. She won the Best Actress award at that year's Cannes Film Festival and was nominated for a Golden Globe. But come Oscar time, she was snubbed, though everyone pretty much assumed she would be nominated. Cher was reportedly more than disappointed and devised a plan to seize what she later called her FU moment to the Academy for not taking her seriously. She called upon famed costume designer Bob Mackie to create her revenge dress. Mackie asked Cher if it should have a loincloth, and she loved the idea. The final design included a black jewel-encrusted bra top with a low-rise skirt with slits on both sides and a massive feathered mohawk headpiece. Cher didn't get to where she is by playing it safe. She wanted to make a statement, and if walking out on that Oscar stage didn't get the message across clearly enough, the legendary star made sure there would be no confusion.
As you can see, I did receive my Academy booklet on how to dress like a serious actress.
I actually found it fascinating, in a weirdly ironic way, that Cher, looking as she did, presented the Oscar to an old-time Hollywood star, Don Amici, of all people. What a contrast! Cher's participation brought some much-needed excitement to what was considered to be an otherwise dull evening. And while the announcement of Marlon Brando as Best Actor of 1972 for his performance in The Godfather was hardly a shock, everyone expected him to win his second Oscar for what was considered his greatest performance in over a decade. What followed was a whole other matter. As most of you know, Brando didn't show up, instead asking a young woman to accept on his behalf. Reports vary as to how Brando met Sacheen Littlefeather, an actress and activist for American Indian civil rights. As she approached the stage, Littlefeather did as instructed and politely refused the award from presenters Roger Moore and Liv Ullmann. She began reading a prepared speech, which explained why Marlon Brando would not accept the Oscar. Shortly into the speech, Littlefeather was booed, mixed with some applause, and made a gallant attempt to finish before exiting the stage, leaving behind an awkward silence.
And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry, excuse me,
Backstage, Littlefeather told reporters that show producer Howard Koch had seen the 739-word speech and told her that she had 60 seconds to speak before she would be removed from the stage. At a press conference held later, Littlefeather read the speech in its entirety, which was published by the New York Times. What followed was a slew of criticism, much of it aimed at Littlefeather, who was mocked for her appearance. Following the Best Actor award, presenter Raquel Welch ad-libbed,
Hope they haven't got a cause.
The incident overshadowed everything else about that year's awards. While Marlon Brando later claimed not to understand the reaction by the audience,
I was embarrassed for Shasheen. She wasn't able to say what she intended to say, and I was distressed that people should have booed and whistled and stomped, even though perhaps it was directed at myself. They should have at least had the courtesy to listen to her.
his peers called him out for his actions, including Michael Caine, who blamed Brando for, quote, letting some poor little Indian girl take the booze instead of standing up and doing it himself. After this happened, the Academy forbade anyone from accepting an Oscar in the absence of the winner, the task being relegated to those presenting the award. Footnote: the Academy made an exception in 1985 when Angela Lansbury accepted the Best Supporting Actress award for Dame Peggy Ashcroft, who was attending the funeral of her friend Sir Michael Redgrave. As for Sacheen Littlefeather, the actress stated she had been blacklisted by Hollywood for her participation in 1973. In 2022, the Academy sent Littlefeather a statement of apology, which read, quote, the abuse you endured because of this statement was unwarranted and unjustified. The emotional burden you have lived through and the cost to your own career and our industry are irreparable. For too long, the courage you showed has been unacknowledged. For this, we offer both our deepest apologies and our sincere admiration. Littlefeather died of cancer in 2022. At the 95th Oscar ceremony in 2023, the Academy did not recognize Littlefeather during its memoriam segment. Okay, so I know most of you were aware of the shocking moments I've discussed so far, and you probably know there's one coming up about the year someone notoriously crashed the Oscars. Don't worry, I'll get to that. But did you know that that wasn't the first time it happened on the show? You have to go back to the 1962 ceremony. Presenters Vince Edwards and Oscar winner Shelley Winters came out to announce the winners for Best Achievement in Cinematography. After Howard Keel accepted for the winner of The Hustler, Stan Berman, a New York City cab driver, walked over to present a homemade Oscar to host Bob Hope.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the world's greatest gatecrasher, and I just came here to present Bob Hope with his 1938 trophy. Here you are, Bob. Stan Berman. This is for Bob.
We'll give it to him.
Edwards and Winters laughed, not knowing exactly what to do, and Hope quipped,
who needs Price Waterhouse? All we need's a doorman.
Berman had to pass through several security guards and later remarked, I could have gone on earlier. I did not want to disrupt the proceedings altogether. Also, I could have made a longer speech than I did, but I figured, after all, this is the actor's evening and not Stanley Berman's evening alone. So I think I was very good about it and did it right. This wasn't Berman's only successful attempt at crashing a major event. He managed to work his way into the presidential box at John F. Kennedy's inauguration ball. Talk about balls.
There's the president, there's Mrs. Joseph Kennedy, and Mr. Joseph Kennedy, and there's Stan.
Anyway, Stan Berman died in 1968 at the age of 41. There are no published reports of what took place at his funeral. Before I streak to the final shocking Oscar moment, I want to express my appreciation to each of you for being a part of this channel. As you can see in this video, the Oscars have their share of good and not so good moments. But I love talking about all of them, and I am grateful to have found others who enjoy talking about them too. After the video concludes with a final word from an Oscar winner, will you please click on the like button? And if you're not a subscriber, consider joining our community of friendly and knowledgeable members who always speak their minds. In addition to a new video posted each week, there are daily polls which need your votes. Some of us are old enough to remember the streaking craze that took place in the early 1970s. Considered a prank or sign of protest, in December 1973, Time magazine called streaking, quote, a growing Los Angeles area fad that was catching on among college students and other groups. In February 1974, the press began calling it a streaking epidemic. By the first week of March, college campuses across the country were competing to set streaking records. Mark Roberts, a professional streaker of sorts, managed to do the deed at the 2004 Super Bowl. Even Snoopy got into the act. But for the sake of this discussion, perhaps the most notorious incident occurred at the 1975 Oscars ceremony. Just as show host David Niven was to introduce Elizabeth Taylor as the presenter of Best Picture, Robert Opel, a photographer and gallery owner, ran nude across the stage, flashing a peace sign. The audience reacted with screams and laughter, which lasted for nearly a minute. Opel had posed as a journalist to gain entry backstage and waited for the perfect moment to make his entrance. Years later, evidence suggested that this was an organized publicity stunt orchestrated by the show's producer, Jack Haley Jr., though at the time David Niven received wide praise for handling the situation with such professional aplomb. Robert Metzler, the show's business manager, reported that Niven asked Metzler's wife to borrow a pen so he could write down the line for which he became most famous.
But isn't it fascinating to think that probably the only laugh that man will ever get in his life is by stripping off and showing his shortcomings.
I'd like to believe that this wasn't staged, though it requires suspended disbelief that the streaker took off his clothes backstage without anyone noticing. Robert Opel gained notoriety for his act at the Oscars. He was shot to death in 1979 at the age of 39. So what do you think of these shocking Oscar moments? Are there others that come to mind other than unexpected winners? Be sure and share in the comments. And until next time, I hope I hear these words someday.
That's a pretty hard act to follow.